Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook. Chapter 6 Harley Quinn. Silver Superman is already the most powerful of all normal Supermen, and a thinking machine Superman template is being stacked behind. Carl recalled the setting of the thinking machine Superman in DC Comics for a while. Thinking machine Superman appeared in DC Comics. Normally, thinking machine Superman is not Superman at all. Because the thinking machine, Superman is the existence of Superman and Kaoba being integrated into the thinking robot by the quantum Superman. So in simple terms, the thinking machine Superman should belong to a super weapon. But the fighting power of this super weapon is too powerful. The thinking machine Superman possesses infinite speed and strength. In terms of setting alone, it is even more terrifying than Silver Superman. It can even be said that the thinking machine Superman is the strongest existence among the countless Supermans that appear in comics, not one of them. Even if it is the Superman of the main universe who can blow up the 6 dimensions with one punch, it cannot compare with the thinking machine Superman. Think about the thinking machine Superman's metamorphosis can also be understood. After all, the thinking machine Superman is not the form that a normal Superman can achieve at all. In Carl's eyes, the final form of a normal Superman should be a golden Superman who has become a 5-dimensional person. The golden Superman is not the Superman of the golden age. The golden Superman also has great power, but his growth has reached the upper limit. Silver Superman is different. Silver Superman is the most potential existence among normal Supermen. The reason is because Silver Superman can grow infinitely. There used to be a little Superman in DC Comics. This little Superman was a fierce fighter, and even killed the hunk of the DC editorial department. This supreme little Superman is, in a sense, a Silver Superman. Carl couldn't help short of breath when he thought of the blessing of his 3 Superman templates in the future. Carl really can't imagine how horrible he will be in the future. But now, what Carl is thinking about is how to increase the integration progress of the double Superman template. According to the system, if you want to increase the integration progress of the Superman template, Carl needs to contact some specific characters in this world to increase. As for which ones belong to particular people, Carl didn't know, and the system didn't inform him. Let's explore slowly first. Carl thought to himself. Now that the novice task is completed and the Silver Superman template is released, Carl only needs to fish and bask in the sun every day, and enjoy life in peace. With the blessing of Superman's bloodline, whether to go to work in the future depends entirely on Carl's own mood. It is precisely with this kind of thinking that Carl feels at this moment that it turns out that there is no mortgage or car loan, and the feeling of being free is so cool. Carl is a psychiatrist in this world and is currently working in a psychological counseling clinic. Carl has changed into normal clothes after coming out of the bathroom of the psychological counseling clinic. There are currently several employees in the clinic. Carl works with a psychologist named Nathan, and the two share a consulting room. The location of Carl's desk is relatively close to the window, so he can basically get the sun in the afternoon. Just sat down to bask in the sun for a while, when Carl heard the tap of high heels in his ears. Carl's eyes moved slowly, and an urban beauty with blonde hair and excellent figure was walking slowly towards him. After seeing the appearance of this urban beauty, Carl couldn't help but be taken aback. Because the woman walking towards him looks like the same as the actor Margot Robbie who played Harley Quinn in the previous life. Before Carl could respond, Nathan, a psychiatrist who was sitting at the table beside him, had already stood up and said enthusiastically to the urban beauty who came over, "Boss, what's the matter?" Facing Nathan's enthusiasm, the female assistant who was following the urban beauty flashed a look of disgust in her eyes. Naturally, the two came here, not for this Nathan, but for Carl who was sitting next to Nathan. The assistant looked carefully at the handsome Carl, and then quietly compared in his mind the active and enthusiastic Nathan in front of him. Both are psychologists, but the gap between the two is obvious. Nathan is no match for Carl in terms of height or looks. Carl's figure is not only tall and strong, but also exudes a sunny temperament. Perhaps because of the special affinity Superman possesses, Carl is now the type who can make a woman's heart flutter at a glance. The assistant didn't speak, but Harley Quinn, the new owner of the psychological clinic, said calmly, "I'm sorry, Nathan, I'm here to see Carl." Hearing Harley Quinn's voice, Nathan's face was extremely embarrassed, and finally he could only laugh dryly, and sat down resentfully. "Looking for me?" Carl frowned, stood up, and at the same time, memories from a few hours ago flooded his mind. The original owner of the psychological counseling clinic is said to have run away with debts, and the psychological counseling clinic was taken down by a new female boss. According to colleagues, the new boss of this psychological counseling clinic is a beautiful woman. Now looking at this urban beauty who looks somewhat similar to the Harley Quinn actor, Carl has a slight understanding in his heart, thinking that she should be the boss of the big beauty. Hello, Mr. Carl. I read a lot of information and found that you have been to the Arkham Asylum to provide psychological counseling and treatment for some criminals. Please give me more advice on your work in the future. I'm the new boss of this psychological counseling clinic, and my name is Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn smiled at Carl, and then extended her hand generously. Is it really Harley Quinn? Carl was stunned. I thought it was just a coincidence that the woman in front of me looked similar to that Hollywood actor. Unexpectedly, the other party turned out to be the famous Harley Quinn. Wait, is there something wrong? Isn't Harley Quinn from DC Comics? How could it appear in the Marvel world? Carl was a little confused. Chapter 7. Carl carefully looked at Harley Quinn in front of him. Obviously, she did not look like Harley Quinn with makeup. In other words, the Harley Quinn standing in front of him has a high probability of being a normal person. Seeing this, Carl's heart moved. Could it be that Harley Quinn in front of me hasn't met Joker yet? But isn't Harley Quinn supposed to be in Gotham City? How could it appear in NY City? Doubts arose in Carl's mind, but he still didn't forget to shake Harley's hand. Stretching out his right hand and briefly shaking Harley, Carl let go of it very gentlemanly. It's this kind of subtle behavior that makes Harley's affection for Carl soar. Carl was also lost in thought at the moment. Originally, Carl thought he had just traveled to the Marvel world. But after seeing Harley Quinn appearing in front of him, Carl had to look carefully at the memory of his predecessor again. When remembering the predecessor of Integrate before, Carl always picked some key points to read. In fact, he didn't read all the memories of his predecessor. The appearance of Harley Quinn made Carl go through the memory of his predecessor carefully again at an astonishing speed. This time, Carl can be said to have retrieved all the memories carefully. Thanks to Superman's brain, it took Carl less than a second to read these memories. It turned out that what I traveled through was actually the integrated world of the two American comics universes, Marvel and DC. Focusing on Harley Quinn's beautiful face again, Carl recalled some experiences about Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn is a supervillain in DC Comics. Before she turned into a deranged Harley Quinn, she was a well-known criminal psychologist in Gotham City. To say that the turning point in Harley Quinn's life began when she was specially hired by Arkham Asylum as a psychological counselor for inmates. In Arkham Asylum, Harley Quinn meets the supervillain Joker. Since then, the whole person has embarked on the road of no return to become a supervillain. Carl, it seems that you have heard about our boss's power. Nathan, who just sat down, said happily, the boss is a famous criminal psychologist in several cities here. Now that the boss is here, the business of our clinic will definitely get better and better in the future. Harley Quinn frowned slightly. She really didn't like someone interrupting when she was talking to others. Even though the man named Nathan was flattering him, Harley still didn't like it very much. Suppressing the displeasure in his heart, Harley Quinn ignored Nathan, but smiled at Carl and said, Mr. Carl, I have read the development plan you submitted earlier. Development plan? Carl was taken aback. After searching in his mind, Carl just remembered that there is indeed such a thing. When he just crossed over, the new boss of Harley Quinn asked every employee of the clinic to use his own ideas to submit a copy describing the future clinic development plan in a few hundred words. At that time, Carl was still in a state where there were two strands of memory in his head, which made his thoughts very confused. In addition, Carl also needs to receive information from the system, so he wrote a copy and handed it in a daze. Looking at the situation, that casually written development plan is in line with Harley Quinn's wishes. Yes, Carl. I have already read the development plan you submitted. I value your talent for being able to come up with such a perfect development strategy in such a short period of time. In addition, you are a psychologist with excellent experience, so my clinic wants to keep you. Mr. Carl, if you want, starting today, you will be the first official employee of our new clinic. Harley Quinn spoke out her thoughts truthfully. Carl was about to speak to respond, when the notification that the system released the task suddenly sounded in his ears. Promise to Harley Quinn, join the new Harley Psychological Counseling Clinic. Task completion reward, Steel Body Superman Template Integrate Progress increased by 0.3%, Silver Superman Template Integrate Progress increased by 0.2%. Task. Talking to Harley Quinn actually triggers the quest. After Carl reacted, he was secretly surprised. Seeing the reward content of the task, Carl was very excited. Quests can increase the integration of 2 Superman templates. Could it be that Harley Quinn is the specific person mentioned by the system that needs to be contacted? Thinking of this, Carl didn't need to be in the hesitation, and immediately responded with a smile and indifferently, "It's a great honor to work with Ms. Harley in the future." After receiving Carl's reply, Harley squinted his eyes and was very happy. "I will also ask Mr. Carl for advice in the future." After Harley Quinn left, the only sound left in the consulting room was the sound of typing on the keyboard. Carl's deskmate, Nathan, who wanted to flatter Harley Quinn before, said enviously, "Carl, you are so lucky to be able to work with the boss of Harley in the future." "Really? It's probably just luck." Carl was non-committal. Nathan immediately shook his head with a wry smile when he heard the words, "Oh, only the boss of your development plan in the clinic has taken a fancy to it, and the rest of us who failed to pass the development plan copywriting will definitely be expelled later." "Brother Carl, maybe we won't see each other tomorrow." Carl could only pat him on the shoulder upon hearing this. Nathan shook his head, sat in his seat, and seemed to be thinking about the future. After being free, Carl took out his mobile phone, ready to go to the internet of this world to retrieve some useful information. While memories provide some information, it's up to Carl to take the initiative to learn about the world. Just as Carl retrieved the information he needed, the gate of the bank where the robbery happened just now has been completely blocked. The top agent Phil Coulson from SHIE.LD is half squatting, carefully surveying the surroundings. After checking all the details in the vicinity, Phil Coulson just got up, took out his phone and looked at the bank's surveillance video. As Carl appeared on the video, Phil Coulson's expression gradually became serious. With a powerful body that can resist bullets and can fly, the man on this screen is most likely a mutant. For the ability to release rays from both eyes, Phil Coulson saw it in a mutant. That mutant is the Cyclops of Xavier's school, a student of the famous Professor X. Possesses an ability similar to Cyclops, and at the same time, the defense can reach the level where guns can't hurt at all. The destructive power of landing more than 10 meters can smash the ground into a 1-meter deep pothole. It is not clear whether this guy is deliberately showing his strength. There's never been any information about this mutant before. It seems like a tricky guy. Phil Coulson thought for a moment, and finally contacted the director of SHIE.LD Nick Fury with his mobile phone. After reporting the situation on the scene to Nick Fury one by one, Phil Coulson just left the bank. Chapter 8. After Carl determined that he had traveled to a strange world, the first thing he did was to understand the world. And the best way to understand the world you live in is definitely to digest the existing memories in your mind. When Carl knew from his memory that there were such super, large companies as Stark Industries and Osborne Group in this world, he thought he had come to the Marvel world. But Carl never expected. This world is not a separate Marvel universe, there is even a DC universe. When he was chasing American comics before, Carl had seen the Avengers vs. Justice League linkage comics. But who would have thought that one day he would actually travel through this complicated world? No wonder there are no DC comics in this world, because DC is already in this world. No news related to Superman was retrieved. I don't know if there is Clark Kent in this world. Superman is the son of the world in the DC world, and his influence on the entire universe is self-evident. Just when Carl was thinking about the information, the system in his body suddenly responded. Host, Krypton in this universe has already been destroyed, and only scattered Kryptonians are left in the universe, so the original Superman has no chance to come to this planet. Krypton has already been destroyed? Carl was slightly startled. According to the system, it seems that Superman, who was supposed to be sent to Blue Star, didn't come. Is it because of the integrated worldview of the two universes? After Carl learned about Superman, he focused his attention on those powerful beings in the American comics world. Whether it's DC Comics or Marvel Comics, there are many dimensional, multi-universe and even multi-universe powerhouses in both worlds. And now that Marvel and DC are merged into one world, it means that there must be more powerful people in the universe than in a single universe. Carl knows very well that the more chaotic and dangerous the world is, the more power is needed. Now living in this fist-talking world, Carl is not too worried, because he now has 2 Superman templates. Carl now only needs to slowly do the task to improve the progress of the template integrate, and then bask in the sun every day. After figuring out that the world he is in is the American comics universe integrated by Marvel and DC, Carl is not only not afraid, but a wave of excitement emerges from the bottom of his heart. The integration of the 2 huge American comics worldviews means that you can play against more powerful players. At that time, the whole world, no, even the whole universe can witness the power of Superman with their own eyes. Gathering his mind, Carl continued to search for information on his mobile phone. I see, hasn't the Stark of this world become Iron Man? Joker just became a villain. The vigilante in Gotham City hasn't heard anything yet. These news seem to express that the prelude to this universe has not really opened yet. So, I still have enough time to develop and grow? Carl crossed his arms, and his heart became extremely calm. In the world of American comics, there is a law that Carl calls the law of the superhero. To put it simply, it is an originally peaceful world. After the appearance of superheroes, it also announces that supervillains and powerful enemies are about to appear. This chain reaction is pretty much an established rule in the world of American comics. After all, it is impossible for a debut superhero to have no rivals, otherwise, it is impossible for a superhero to be well known to the public. Stark Industries, Wayne Enterprises, and Osborne Enterprises all belong to the top 10 super enterprises in the world. The integrated worldview of the 2 universes is really interesting. Time ticked by as Carl continued to search the web for useful information. In a blink of an eye, it was time to get off work. Carl tidied up his desk and just walked out of the consulting room. Coincidentally, Harley Quinn also just came out of the consulting room. Seeing Harley Quinn, Carl was very surprised. He didn't expect that Harley Quinn hadn't got off work so late. When Westerners get off work, no matter what the situation is, they can't stop them from going home. Do you want to work an extra minute? No way. Carl left a little later because he had been out in the sun for a while. Half an hour has passed since the end of get off work. Harley Quinn was also taken aback when she saw Carl's figure. After realizing it, she immediately raised her hand to say hello. Hi, Dr. Carl. I didn't expect Dr. Carl to leave work so late. Is he chatting with customers? Harley asked curiously. She had seen it on Carl's resume, and Carl was a very dedicated person. That's one of the reasons Harley wants to keep Carl, a veteran of the clinic. Definitely, besides Carl is very professional, he is also very handsome, it is very suitable to be the face of the clinic. No, there aren't many visitors today, so I just read some news. Carl shrugged. He can't tell the truth that he spent most of his time basking in the sun, right? I see. Oh, by the way, Mr. Carl, congratulations on being the only remaining employee from the last clinic. The only employee left? Carl paused. Had Harley fired them all, as Nathan said? Harley nodded lightly, and said, Harley Clinic doesn't need to eat waste, waiting to die. Naturally, there is no need for talented people to stay. Everyone else got fired, including Nathan? Carl asked uncertainly. Yes, Mr. Carl, only you, me, and my assistant are left in the clinic. In that case, I'm really lucky. Chapter 9. The two chatted briefly. Harley raised his right wrist watch to look at the time, and asked, Mr. Carl, are you going home? Yes, it's dangerous to run outside at night. It's good to stay at home and watch a movie. That's right, I'm going home too. When I checked my resume, Dr. Carl, you seem to live in Queens. Yeah, I live right there in Queens. Coincidentally, I live there too. Do you want to go together? Harley took out his car keys. Miss Harley, you live in Queens too? Carl looked at the blonde beauty in surprise. Did Harley Quinn really not live in Gotham City? But Carl remembered that in the movie world, Harley was clearly a psychiatrist in Gotham City. It is precisely because of his activities in Gotham that Harley was invited to Arkham Asylum to give Joker psychological counseling treatment. In the end, poor Harley was attracted by Joker's crazy heart and turned into a crazy woman too. Seeing Harley nodding, Carl was about to refuse, but Harley pursed his moist lips, and said with a smile, I really didn't realize that Mr. Carl still has an Oriental reserve. Actually, I prefer people who express their ideas directly. Carl was taken aback for a moment, thinking about it carefully. The way of thinking of Easterners and Westerners is indeed very different. Westerners don't have so many twists and turns. Simply put, they are more open and forthright. Thinking of this, Carl no longer hesitated. Then please trouble Miss Harley. It's okay, just drop by, because I bought a house in Queens. Why don't you go with me if I can drop by? It just so happens that Mr. Carl takes public transportation. In this way, Carl and Harley walked out of the clinic side by side. In Harley's sedan, Carl was sitting in the co-pilot thinking how he should start the conversation when Harley took the initiative to chat with Carl. Mr. Carl, did you hear today? There was a robbery at the bank downtown. I heard that a powerful mutant appeared there and killed the leader of the bank robbers. Did you see it on the news? I haven't seen this kind of news before. Carl pretended to be confused. In fact, Carl was also surprised. Carl originally thought that the TV station would block this special news related to the suspected mutant. The contradiction between mutants and humans in this world is not as deep as in X-Men movies, but even so, the topic of mutants is already very sensitive. When the official attitude is not determined, most TV stations will choose to ignore news reports related to mutant. Showing his super ability in front of so many people today, Carl guessed that he might already be a mutant in the eyes of most people. Yes, the TV station just reported it today. It is said that the officials listed that guy as a super dangerous person, and some people are also terrified of the mutant power he displayed. TSK, that's true. Carl thought deeply. However, he is also a super ability user. If he is in a bad mood and kills innocent people indiscriminately, ordinary people don't even have time to react. Harley Quinn, who was driving with both hands on the steering wheel, glanced at Carl and said noncommittally, I don't quite agree with this point of view. I think the reason why ordinary people have conflicts with this kind of people is mainly due to the instigation of some politicians. Definitely, the bigger factor is ordinary people's jealousy towards mutant. Who wouldn't want to have something like super ability? Exactly. Carl smiled faintly. Of course he knew what Harley Quinn was saying. But Harley's attitude also shows that she doesn't actually hate mutant. Although this mutant's way of eradicating the robbers is a bit crazy, I don't think there is anything wrong with it. A look of excitement gradually appeared on Harley Quinn's face. On the contrary, I think his ruthless approach is correct. Only by using thunderous means to deter those criminals can the effect of killing chickens and monkeys be achieved. So I thought the way the guy in the black battlesuit was doing it was pretty cool. Noticing that Harley's voice seemed to be more agitated, Carl didn't think it was strange. Harley is a ruthless woman who dares to jump into the chemical factory pool, and this kind of madness has always existed in her. Just like that, Carl and Harley chatted, without a word. Through this chat, Carl also knew that Harley Quinn seemed to be interested in developing Gotham City. Compared with NY City and Gotham City, the gap is still obvious. In the relatively peaceful city of NY, the business of psychological counseling is not as good as in Gotham City. There are countless criminals in Gotham City, and Harley, a criminal psychologist and psychiatrist, naturally wants to develop there. It's just that Harley doesn't have enough funds at hand, so she can only develop in NY for a while now. Calmly watching Harley Quinn's delicate side face, Carl leaned on the back of the co-pilot's seat and couldn't help squinting his eyes. The current Harley Quinn has not met the Joker, has not become a Harley Quinn. Does this mean? Some thoughts in Carl's mind gradually became stronger. There are many beautiful women, or female superheroes in the DC world and the Marvel world. As a time traveler, how can Carl do without any goals and pursuits? Children only make choices, and Carl naturally wants them all. Chapter 10. Downstairs from Carl's house, Harley parked the car firmly on the side of the road. After taking the initiative to ask Carl for his contact information, Harley just waved to Carl. See you tomorrow, Dr. Carl. It was a pleasure talking with you. Me too, Miss Harley. See you tomorrow. Carl gestured by. Seeing Harley driving and gradually disappearing at the end of the street, Carl clicked his tongue lightly. He felt the enthusiasm of the Westerners at this moment. Compared with the reservedness of Orientals, Westerners are indeed much more unrestrained. Turning around, Carl's eyes moved to the large apartment building in front of him that was as high as 20 floors. The appearance of the apartment looks very ordinary, but it is this ordinary apartment that makes Carl recall the memories involuntarily. Placed in the entire NY city, Carl's home is actually very ordinary. This kind of apartment can accommodate several families on one floor. Fortunately, Carl has become a permanent resident of the apartment, so he doesn't need to worry about rent or the like. Carl's family lives in room 2015 on the 20th floor. The floor is very high, but fortunately, there is an elevator, which saves the trouble of climbing stairs. Just as the elevator doors were about to close, Carl heard a rush of footsteps. Then the elevator doors that were about to close were opened again. Glancing at the girl who walked in wearing a blue sweater, Carl didn't have any big fluctuations in his heart at first. But when Carl saw the other person's appearance clearly, he was shocked. Because the blonde girl next to her looks too similar to Gwen in The Extraordinary Spider-Man. Sorry, I may have delayed your time. The girl who hurried into the elevator seemed to remember what she had done just now, and couldn't help bowing her head to apologize to Carl. Carl, who was looking at Gwen calmly, shook his head indifferently after hearing what she said. It's okay. Carl naturally doesn't care about such small things. Are you also a resident of this building? The girl slowly raised her head, holding a stack of textbooks in her hands, and was looking at Carl with curious eyes. The girl was very surprised, because it was the first time she saw such a handsome man in this building, especially the man was also tall and looked very strong. Guess you are working out on weekdays. Carl was also carefully observing the beautiful girl in front of him. The girl is very thin and tall, with blonde hair tied in a single ponytail scattered behind her back, looking unexpectedly mature. If it weren't for the stack of high school textbooks in her arms, Carl would even have thought that she was an office worker like himself. Yes, I am a resident on the 20th floor, and I live in room 2015. Room 2015? Gwen covered her mouth and said in surprise, I'm also a resident on the 20th floor. I live in room 2016. I didn't expect that we were neighbors. I always thought that room 2015 was empty. Carl was also taken aback. That's really a coincidence. Do you just come back from school? Well, I have something to do at school today, so I was delayed for some time. Gwen nodded. Gwen squared herself up to the elevator door, but her playful eyes flicked to Carl from time to time. Carl's appearance is indeed very attractive to women. First of all, his temperament is very sunny, which is mostly due to the result of his absorption of solar radiation. And the correct and flawless facial features, paired with a healthy complexion, are even more lethal. Perhaps because of his strong and tall body, Gwen felt an inexplicable sense of security just standing next to Carl. Anyway, it's a pleasure to be your neighbor. My name is Carl. Hi, my name is Gwen Stacy. Hearing the blonde girl announce her name, Carl thought inwardly that it was so. My guess was right, she was indeed Gwen Stacy from The Amazing Spider-Man. Knowing each other's identities, Carl and Gwen had a brief chat, and they knew each other. At this time, the elevator reached the 20th floor, and the two walked out of the elevator one after the other. Seeing Carl take out the key and open the door of room 2015, Gwen felt relieved. The handsome Mr. Carl really did not lie to himself, he is indeed his neighbor. Gwen didn't hear any other voice from Carl Gary, so Gwen asked curiously, does Mr. Carl live alone? Well, I do live alone. That's it. Mr. Carl, if you are free, you can come to my house as a guest. See you tomorrow. See you tomorrow. After exchanging brief greetings with Gwen, Carl opened the door and entered the house. After closing the door, Carl had a strange look on his face. Unexpectedly, he and Gwen Stacy became neighbors. Looking at the time, it was already past 7 o'clock in the evening, and the sky outside had already darkened. Looking into the distance, the neon lights of the bustling big city are always bright, and the darkness cannot completely swallow the city. A bright moon hangs high in the sky and casts silvery white moonlight, making the city look cooler at night. Carl sat on the edge of the bed and moved his gaze to the moon high in the sky. Bathed in the refreshing night breeze blowing into the window, Carl couldn't help but close his eyes slightly, and began to feel the changes in his body carefully. In the clinic during the day, Carl actually had no way to completely calm down and feel the situation in his body. Now that he was quiet, Carl realized that after basking in the afternoon sun, his strength had indeed increased a lot. Just lightly clenched his fists, the air around him was crackling and exploding. It seemed as if he squeezed his fist lightly, and at the same time squeezed the air. The momentum was astonishing. Click on the personal attribute panel, and the data in the column of strength has changed to 10,500 tons. Karl originally had an initial strength of 10,000 tons, but after only basking in the sun for one afternoon, his strength increased by 500 tons. Such a growth rate has to make Karl lament the strength of Superman's blood. Please like and subscribe.